Dearest Super Friends, this is Lady Elena from Technically a Conversation, and I've got some tea to spill. If you would like to receive that tea 1 week early, ad-free, and get some really cool stickers that are voted by you, then please subscribe to our Patreon. I really don't want to start an OnlyFans page, and your Tío Pepe from Sunland Park has already resorted to selling feet pics on the interwebs. And Lord knows what Isela will get herself into. Please help stop the madness. Lucky for you, all we are asking for is $2 a month as opposed to the $5 Tío Pepe is charging per toe. And who knows, we might throw in some feet pics in there for you for subscribing, if you're into that kind of thing, of course. But those will cost you more than the $2. Support us by logging into patreon.com/technicallyaconversation or check our show notes.
Joe Metheny was arrested for murdering 2 women in December of 1996. During his interrogation, he confessed to murdering 8 more people, but investigators were not prepared for how he disposed of the bodies. He would mix their flesh with beef and pork, which he sold to customers out of a barbecue stand on the side of the road, horrifying the investigators and anyone who's ever purchased roadside burgers before. This week, we'll discuss the events that led Joe Metheny down his path to murder, more details than you probably care to know about his culinary skills, and the event that led to Metheny getting caught on this episode of Technically a Conversation. Greetings, you're listening to Technically a Conversation, a podcast where we share an interesting topic or story with each other and hope you find it interesting as well. I'm one half of your host, Jose, and I'm joined today by my lovely co-host, Isela. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing great also, thank you.
Great.
How's your black finger doing? Give us the monthly status update.
You know what? It's growing out very nicely. I will say that. I still don't trust painting over it because now just pieces of it have started to fall off on top. Which is really, I thought it looked bad before. Now this just looks like a fucking wreck. But to the untrained eye, just looks like I got some shit on it. But it's growing out very nicely. And we're about halfway through it, I think. Yeah, we're almost halfway through it. We'll see.
Why don't you put a little bit of bando where like the fingernail is starting to peel off and then paint over it, like if it's like a car or something.
Oh, yeah. Then I could shave it. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good idea. I think that's what acrylic is for, too. Like, I've never done fake nails, like the acrylic, those nails that like, I don't know, whatever the fake nails look like. I've done press-on nails, sure, but those ones that people get them professionally done and they stick on your nails like super hard. But I might ask them if I could do it over just this one. But then how do you take it off? What if I take off the entire first layer of my nail? I know. Forget it. It's like we're spiraling.
Yeah. My next suggestion was going to be maybe just putting super glue, like just to like cover up that hole. I remember when I used to play guitar and sometimes like my fingertips would get cut with the strings. I would just glue the fingertip back on with super glue and just keep on playing.
That's pretty hardcore. But I guess that's what they use, right? In the medical field sometimes.
I don't know. I heard that Stevie Ray Vaughan used to do that. So I was like, well, if super glue was good enough for Stevie Ray Vaughan, it's good enough for me.
Yeah. SRV. What? Hell yeah. All right. Yeah. I have nothing to complain about. I mean, it's just the nail. As much as I love to paint my nails. I mean, they're still painted. I don't know if you can tell. See, they got a little bit of a sheen, a shine.
Oh, yeah. I do see that.
Yeah. It's called a glazed donut, in case you guys are curious.
Looks very glazed.
You can look up glazed donut, and that's what they look like, minus the fucked up nail.
Well, I don't know if you heard this, Isela. Conspiracy theorist turned presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy just dropped another bomb on us earlier this week. He's the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, Lord. Oh, what did he say?
Well, it feels like it was just yesterday when he shared with us that a parasitic worm ate part of his brain, I think that explains a lot of his wild conspiracy theories and anti-vaxxing misinformation that he enjoys spreading.
For sure.
Some people that he considered close friends were Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and Bill Cosby, 3 upstanding members of society. I'm sure you'll agree, Isela.
Yeah, for sure.
So he recently denied eating a barbecued dog, claiming that it was a goat. And now, well, I'll let him tell you in his own words. But before I play you this clip, I will say that if you've never heard Robert F. Kennedy speak before, it's very off-putting and disconcerting. He claims it's due to a vocal condition called spasmodic dysphonia. And you can hear him telling this story to Roseanne Barr, another pillar of the community, which, unsurprisingly, he's also friends with.
Oh, my goodness.
I was taking a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. And I was supposed to meet them there at like maybe 8 or 9. I was driving up maybe, really early, like 7. And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear. And it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear. And so then we went hawking, and I had the bear in my car. And then we had a really good day, and we went late. We were catching a lot of game, and the people really loved it, so we stayed late. And instead of going back to my home in Westchester, I had to go right to the city because there was a dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. And at the end of the dinner, it went late, and I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. And the bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad. So then I thought, at that time, this was a little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They had just put in the bike lanes. And saw a couple of people had gotten killed, and it was every day, and people had gotten badly injured. Every day it was in the press. And so I thought, I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea. And I said, I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought, that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper, and I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And then there were some people on TV in Tyvek suits with gloves on, lifting up the bike, and they were saying they're going to take this up to Albany to get it fingerprinted.
Uh-oh.
And I was worried because my prints were all over that bike. Luckily, the story died down after a while, and it stayed dead for a decade. And the New Yorker somehow found out about it, and they're going to do a big article on me, and that's one of the articles. So they asked me, the fact checker said, it's going to be a bad story.
I
think it's a great story.
So what do you think about that charming story?
Oh, that's terrible. First of all, let's talk about how believable this is. He's like, oh, it was a bear. She hit a bear. And then he's like, but a young bear. Okay, a cub? Is that the word you're looking for, sir? And he's like, I picked it up. What? How strong do you have to be to pick up a fucking bear? Whatever. This guy, sounds like a whole lot of BS. And then he even said like, oh, we were catching so much game. People loved it. Like, you're putting on a show? Get out of here. Nobody, so stupid. I don't know. I had so many issues with it.
if our super friends couldn't make out what he was saying, because he is a little bit hard to understand. In a nutshell, he stated that a woman driving a car in front of him hit a baby bear cub. So Kennedy did the sensible thing and put the dead cub in the back of his car so he could eat it later. He then went falconing with some friends, as one does when you're a millionaire, before attending a dinner party. The dinner party lasted longer than he expected, and he had to go straight to the airport. Not being able to leave a dead bear cub in your car while you fly across the country, for obvious reasons, Kennedy did the only rational thing, which was to dump the bear cub body in Central Park and stage it to look like it had been hit by a bike, which he also happened to have in his car for some reason. He made it clear that he, of course, hadn't been drinking, but some of his friends had, and thought that it would be a funny prank, leading to a decade-long mystery. So why would he confess to it, right? Well, because the New Yorker was about to run a story about this, and he wanted to get ahead of it, leading to one more of RFK's weird, to quote Kamala Harris, confessions. Now, prior to this, were you familiar with this incident?
No.
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 Well, the whole bear cub in Central Park thing, that part was real. It was all over the news because people were like, there are obviously no bears in Central Park, so how the hell did it get here? And why did somebody like dump a bicycle on top of it? So apparently that part is not untrue. The weird thing is, I mean, everything about this story is weird, but that Kennedy had that bear because he intended to take it home, to skin it and to eat it. And when he realized he didn't have time to do that, he just dumped the bear there in Central Park.
Yeah, that sounds so problematic. That's awful.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's around the time that the worm started eating his brain also.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah. I like how there's zero accountability in this entire story, right? He takes no accountability for like, oh, it just got late and I had to go. Oh, and then it just got even later, so I had to go. Oh, my friends thought about it because they were the ones drinking. Like, dude, come on. Let's own up a little bit. Jeez.
Yeah. He's a character, that guy.
Yeah. That's one word to use.
Yeah. All right, enough fucking around, Isela. Ready to get started?
Of course, let's do it.
Great. Let's get started. Now, the following is from an All That's Interesting article by Katie Serena, which we've covered stuff by her before because I was about to make the Serena Morena joke, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I've done that in other episodes.
Yeah.
And an independent article by John Sharman. Links in the show notes.
Show notes.
In December of 1996, police arrested Joe Metheny for the murder of 2 women. Metheny confessed to brutally raping, killing, and dismembering numerous sex workers and homeless people. Investigators were shocked and horrified at his detailed confessions, but nothing could prepare them for how he disposed of the bodies. He would mix the victims' flesh with beef and pork and formed meat patties he would sell to customers as hamburgers out of a small barbecue stand he opened on the side of the road. The customers became non-consenting hiding spots for the bodies of Metheny's victims. Originally, he murdered for revenge. Now, he was murdering whenever he needed more of his special meat. His customers never complained about the taste. He had no remorse and admitted to enjoying murdering. His only regret was that he didn't get to murder the 2 people that he was really after. Pull up a seat, grab your favorite burger. We're going to talk about Joe Metheny, the killer that sold his victims as human flesh burgers. Before we begin, were you familiar with this wholesome feel-good story, Isela?
Actually, yeah, I was, because I remember thinking this was absolutely disgusting. One of the grossest things I had heard. I was like, The only thing that made me feel a little bit better was that we live nowhere close to this guy.
Yeah, and apparently his customers didn't mind the flavor of the meat either.
Oh, wakala.
But of course, I'm totally kidding. It's not a wholesome, feel-good story at all. This guy was a total monster.
Yeah, the worst.
And of course, it's one of the most disgusting stories you've ever heard. Of course, I'm going to cover it.
Yeah.
Now, like we mentioned in the last episode, I was originally going to cover this a couple of weeks ago with Elena, and I was going to do the Somerton Man episode with you, but I figured that Elena would probably be more familiar with Joe Metheny since she's really big into true crime, and you would probably be more familiar with the Somerton Man So I decided to do a swap to get some more genuine reactions and not just repeat facts that you both already knew. Sadly, you already knew about this one, but
No. It's okay. It's very similar to the JJ Arms that we just released too. You were very familiar with it, but yet I'm pretty sure we are going to uncover things that I absolutely did not know or want to know. I'm just kidding. Want to know for sure, because this is always like the cool but kind of creepy thing. You know, it's the same reason why you slow down when there's an accident. You kind of want to look.
yeah, for sure. And thank you for putting a positive spin on that.
I don't know how positive that is.
Well, since Halloween is less than 2 months away when this episode airs, I thought now would be a good time to start getting into some of the more grisly stories.
Ooh.
So let's talk a little bit about his childhood and what led him down his path of madness, his murdering career, if you will.
Career. Yeah.
And the end of his horrifying story.
All right.
Now, you're familiar with the story, but have you ever seen what Joe Metheny looks like?
I remember thinking that he was kind of thin, and I was surprised that he was capable of all this nastiness.
Oh, no, on the contrary, he's a big bear of a man. He looks like he would be a Batman villain or something.
Okay. So he's more like the Penguin?
Yeah, I mean, he's more, he genuinely looks like a bear, but like a person that's a bear.
Oh, okay. No, I don't remember his face then at all. Or his body, or him.
I'll send you a picture of the episode art so you could see it. And for our super friends, this will be the artwork for the episode. But he pretty much looks exactly like what you would picture a killer who would make hamburgers out of his victims to look like. It's almost prestige casting, similar to how J.D. Vance looks exactly like what you would picture a couch fucker to look like.
Oh, wow.
Prestige casting.
Yes. You know what he looks like? Did you ever watch the movie Better Off Dead? The one with John Cusack?
No, I don't think I ever saw it.
I'm going to send you over the picture of what the boss looked like, and he looked just like him. But anyway, carry on. We'll reconvene later.
All right. So there isn't a lot that we know about Metheny and his early childhood, aside from suffering from a lot of neglect. His father was an alcoholic and wasn't in the picture. His mother was forced to work extra shifts to support Metheny and her other 5 children. Metheny joined the army in 1973 when he was 19 years old, and that's when Metheny lost contact with his family. His mother claimed that he was also into drugs, which she blames with causing him to drift further away from the family. After leaving the army, Metheny took jobs working in lumber yards and truck driving. Now, here comes his villain origin story. In 1994, Metheny was living in Baltimore with his girlfriend and their 6-year-old son. Metheny was a truck driver, so he was away from home for long periods of time. One day, when he returned home from one of his long stints on the road, he found that his girlfriend was gone and took their son with her. This catapulted Metheny into a rage. Like Metheny, his girlfriend was also a drug addict, so he thought that she left with another man to live on the streets with him. He searched for her at halfway houses and under a bridge where she would often go to buy and do drugs. He didn't find his girlfriend under the bridge. Instead, he found 2 homeless men who he believed knew the girlfriend. When they wouldn't tell him where his family was, Metheny killed both of the men with an axe he conveniently had on him. And it's a good thing he had the axe on him because it would have been so awkward and so much less dramatic if he hadn't, right?
I think it sounds so premeditated. Like he was ready to kill somebody.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I think that's the detail that really sells that part of the story, that he came axe in hand looking to murder somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, upon completing his murderous tantrum, he noticed a nearby fisherman who might have seen what he did. So he killed him too, just to be on the safe side. After he snapped out of his little murder trance and realized what he had done, Metheny panicked and tossed the bodies into the river to hide the evidence. These first 3 murders are considered by some to be crimes of passion. He hadn't developed a taste for murder or the culinary arts just yet. While Metheny didn't find his girlfriend and son, he did get some closure on his son's whereabouts. Metheny stated that 6 months after this incident, he learned that his girlfriend had moved to the other side of town, quote, with some asshole that had her out selling her ass for drugs. The girlfriend, an asshole, as Metheny affectionately called the guy, got busted for drugs, and they took his son away from him for child neglect and child abuse.
Wow.
Pretty awful, huh?
It's honestly very sad. But at the same time, this is that story of addiction. And I mean, we would love to think that like love is stronger and you can quit for your kids. And, you know, some people absolutely can. And like amazing props to those people. But sometimes it's stronger than anything else. And it's just unbreakable. Wow. That poor kid.
Yeah. Low key, I feel like the child would have been in better hands, literally, with anyone other than his parents.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now that brings up like a whole issue with the whole foster care system for sure. But yeah, I agree. Anybody would have been better.
Yeah. And I do hope that they found them a loving and supporting home. There's not a lot of details about the kid and what ended up becoming of him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't take after his father and open up the old hamburger stand that he left behind.
Right, yeah. Swinging that old sledgehammer. The family sledgehammer.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break, fix ourselves some nice juicy burgers.
Hey.
And when we return, we'll talk about when Metheny's murdering and cooking career really got off the ground.
Pack your body bags. We're going on a slaycation. Tim, what's a slaycation?
A slaycation is a murder or mysterious death that happens while you're on vacation.
If you like to mix humor with horror and travel,
Join me, Kim Davis,
And me, Adam Tex Davis.
and me, Jerry Colbert,
as we look at the craziest slaycations that will have you asking, what the F is wrong with people? You can find Slaycation on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Just remember, getting away can be murder.
And we're back.
And we're back.
Did you murder any homeless men or fishermen hanging out under a bridge during our break?
Under a bridge. Yes, that crazy troll. I was so sick of him. No.
Oh, my next question was, did you sell any human hamburgers off the side of the road? Maybe from that crazy troll?
Right there on the corner with the naranjas, with the oranges. You know, just kidding.
So what are your thoughts on Metheny and his villain origin story so far?
It's really terrible. I understand, for sure. It feels very heartless. But at the same time, it paints a picture for why people shouldn't have too many kids. This is really difficult. It's very stressful, and it's not even good for the kids growing up, clearly, as the best exhibit A here. It's just all around a bad recipe, but still, come on, there are people that have gone through worse shit and they grew up fine. Well, I mean, you know, fine asterisk.
Yeah, no, this definitely is a ringing endorsement for Planned Parenthood, if there ever was one.
Just family planning, you know, I mean, use condoms, people, like whatever you got to do, family planning, birth control, whatever, IUDs.
All right, so now that we got Metheny's humble beginnings out of the way, let's dig into the meat of the story. Oh, sorry.
That's funny.
Sorry, I'll keep the puns to a minimum.
Yeah, you didn't like mine.
And every time I see Metheny, I always want to say Bethany. Like, it makes me stop because my impulse is to say Bethany, but it's Metheny, like in crystal meth.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, was his drug of choice meth before it was like meth?
He does look like he would be a crystal meth user, honestly.
He does have a methy face. Like, that's a thing. I'm just kidding.
All right, so Joe Crystal Metheny was actually arrested for the murders of the two men under the bridge and spent a year and a half in county jail awaiting trial. Since the police were unable to find the bodies that he dumped into the river, Metheny was acquitted of any charges. Without any evidence tying him to the crimes, Metheny was a free man and once again resumed his hero's quest of finding his missing girlfriend and son. Armed with the knowledge that his girlfriend was selling her ass for drugs, to quote Metheny, Metheny questioned two sex workers for information on his missing girlfriend. When they failed to provide him with any useful information, Metheny murdered the women. Rather than using his tried and true method of dumping the bodies into the river, Metheny had a better idea of disposing of the women. He brought the bodies home, where he dismembered them and stored the meatiest parts in Tupperware containers. What didn't fit in his freezer, he buried in a truck lot that was owned by the pallet company that he worked for. And this was super convenient for him because at this point in his life, he was living in a trailer on the pallet company property. So it was quick access for him.
Ugh.
This was the point in his murder spree where people feel he started murdering for fun.
Oh, that's just crazy to even say that he started to murder for fun. I mean, obviously he liked it.
Yeah, because he didn't really have a motive at this point.
No, after the lady was useless, he realized, oh, well, then you're useless, not just to me, but to everyone. And let me end your life, which is atrocious.
Yeah. And the motive really is finding the girlfriend and the guy that she ran off with. So, yeah, I mean, that's weird that he would just say, oh, well, you don't know. That's fine. I'll murder you anyway. It'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Over the next several weeks, he mixed the flesh of the sex workers with pork and beef and formed them into hamburger patties. He would sell the hamburgers made out of the women's flesh out of a small barbecue stand that he opened on the side of the road. The customer helped Metheny dispose of the bodies, and in return, they got a yummy meal out of it. A total win-win situation.
Oh my God, if they only knew. That's so terrible.
No, it is terrible. Trying to make light of it, I guess, but...
Yeah, no, for sure.
We're also a comedy podcast, even though we normally fail at our jokes, but...
In case you didn't notice, yeah. As long as we're laughing ourselves, it's okay. If you guys catch up eventually, great.
Yeah, sure. Okay. No, I'm kidding, yeah. So whenever Metheny ran out of his special ingredient, he would simply murder another sex worker or homeless person and butcher them. He later told the police that he never received any complaints about the meat tasting funny, and from all appearances, it seemed like no one ever noticed his artisanally crafted burgers, seasoned to perfection, had a little something extra in them.
He says he never received any complaints, but maybe that was the last thing they said, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, maybe they became the next burgers for the next day.
Word. Yes, exactly.
And I'll admit, that does seem kind of gross, but I kind of like the idea of mixing the beef with the pork. That actually sounds like it would be super delicious. So next time I make some burgers, I'm going to try mixing some beef and pork. I bet it would taste amazing.
My sister would make the stuffing of the turkey with sausage with pork. It was really good.
That's pretty smart. It offsets the horrible taste of the turkey.
Yeah. No, and now it's like all juicy because it's all juicy with the pork, the sausage.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. Metheny did share some words of wisdom with the world, which I will now share with you, Isela.
Uh-oh.
Quote, "The human body tastes very similar to pork. If you mix it together, no one can tell the difference. So, the next time you're riding down the road and you happen to see an open pit beef stand that you've never seen before, make sure that you think about this story before you take a bite of that sandwich."
I can't believe he said that.
I know. Aska.
First, who is really just digging in on some open pits? That just sounds so crazy to me. No. Oh my God, no, that's just terrible.
It is terrible, but as I was writing the script, I kept craving burgers more and more. And I think after we're done with this, I'm going to go to McDonald's or something.
I have been craving, so I live really close to a Whataburger. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Whataburger outside of Texas, but it's a big thing here. And they have really great burgers. Like I miss those a lot. So you talking about burgers.
Let's do a Whataburger run after this.
We're going to do Crab Fest.
Well, that's tomorrow. We could still do Whataburger today. Whataburger's cheap.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's do it. Hey.
So Metheny's killing spree came to an end in 1996 when one of his victims, Rita Kemper, managed to escape from Metheny and ran to the police. During his interrogation, Metheny confessed and gave details about all of his murders. He even mentioned the fisherman that he had killed several years earlier. Apparently the police didn't know about that one, which is why earlier in the story, he had only gotten arrested for the murder of the 2 homeless men. So he's like, oh yeah, you guys forgot one. There was also the fisherman.
What? He's like the actual honest killer. What the hell? That's so weird.
Honest Metheny. That's what they always called him.
Yeah, honest crystal face. Crystal meth face.
Honest crystal Metheny.
That's funny.
According to the confessions, he killed 10 people, and the police believe that he would have continued killing if he had not been caught. Despite Metheny's confession to 10 murders, there was only enough evidence to prosecute him for 2, Kathy Magaziner and Kimberly Spicer, who he murdered in the mid-1990s. And even though Metheny came off as a big tough guy and said that he would never say that he was sorry, since that was a lie, and he was prepared for God to judge him and send him to hell for all eternity, Metheny reportedly broke down when he saw Kimberly Spicer's mom in court. In his confession that he made with detectives, he said that he was a very sick person and he got a rush and high out of murdering. Originally, Metheny was given a death sentence, but was overturned on appeal and was given 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Metheny was found unresponsive in his jail cell on Saturday, August 5th, 2017, and he was pronounced dead. He was 62 years old. Several of the sources that I used reported that his death was under investigation, but I could not locate any sources that gave a cause of death. So it looks like maybe the media completely lost interest in the story after he had died, and they never followed up on the story.
Wow.
So now that you know the story, what are your thoughts, Isela?
I'm a little confused because if he really did have some psychopathy, like it sounds, it's hard to deny psychopathy in this. It does not make sense that he would feel anything and start to break down when he saw Spicer's mom.
That's the part that doesn't make sense to me because, from all the interviews and everything that there were of him, he always came off as a big tough guy. But I don't know, maybe when he saw the mom, maybe he thought of his own mom at that point. Like you said, he was probably suffering from psychopathy and other things, who knows? But that was the part that seemed strange to me too, that he was like, oh, I'm never going to confess. Or I'm never going to say I'm sorry. It would all be a lie. And then he breaks down. So that part is a little bit strange.
I don't doubt that it took place. I'm just wondering how genuine it was. Because, even Ted Bundy was a manipulator, like a master manipulator, So I wonder if it was more that than anything else. I find it funny that that he was so honest and like, oh, you didn't see those other dead bodies around there. Like, that's just kind of crazy. It's great that he was actually honest and, came forth about the other bodies, but it's so insane how he thought this idea up and just went with it for years.
Going back to the honesty part, the fact that the police couldn't find any evidence for any of the other murders kind of makes me question just how honest he really was. We know for sure that he killed 2 people because they were able to find evidence. I believe that they found the remains that I guess hadn't been cooked up. They were on that lot where he buried them. So they were able to find them, but why were they not able to find any evidence for the other 8 deaths that he claimed? Maybe he might not have committed all those murders. Maybe he only committed 2 and, he said he committed 8 others just to bolster himself up.
That's like the weirdest boast ever. That's the weirdest boast. But yeah, that's very possible.
He had to have some cred going into jail. So maybe he said that just so, he was like, I'm going to get the death sentence anyway. So whether I'm in there for killing 2 people or killing 20, doesn't really matter.
And it's very possible. I know that some killers or psychopaths are very aware and they would much rather almost put themselves away so that they don't have the opportunity to kill.
That makes sense.
So, maybe this was his I'm going to slam the cell shut on myself, just pretend to confess to all these murders.
Yeah. Unless they find the evidence of those other murders, who really knows,
I think the names are going to be important because, what if the names, he's like, oh, yeah, you didn't find the other guy? Joe Schmo? What? Joe Schmo? What about Jane? You know what I mean? Jane Doe. What the hell? Then it's like, we're catching on.
I'm pretty sure that when he was carving them up, they really weren't in a place where they could talk and, have small chit chat. It's not like going to the barber, and like, so tell me about your day.
Yeah, exactly. Vent to me about your husband. Go ahead. I got you. It's true. That's a very good point.
Now, this gruesome story not only has me craving a big, juicy burger from a random hamburger stand on the side of the road, it also has me craving some whiskey. What about you, Isela?
I mean, whiskey's always delicious. I don't know if murder really kind of puts me in that mood.
Well, one of the promos that we played earlier was for murder and mimosas, so maybe we're missing something. Maybe murder and alcohol do go perfectly together.
That's true. We might be missing out.
It's like chocolate and peanut butter, maybe. Who knows?
Oh my God, delicious.
Now, this whiskey that we're going to talk about, you were actually with me when I purchased it. Remember?
Yes.
It is Glenfiddich 12. Now, I'm mainly a bourbon drinker, but sometimes I'm feeling a little bougie and crave a good scotch. And this one is a classic. I know it's been a few weeks, but if I remember correctly, you did like this one, right?
I really did. A lot. It was very tasty.
Yeah, for sure it is. Scotch usually tends to be on the expensive side of whiskey, especially for a single malt. But at $55, Glenfiddich 12 is actually a very affordable single malt Scotch whiskey. If you're wondering what the big deal about a single malt is, let me explain a little bit about Scotch and some of the rules. A single malt Scotch is distilled entirely from a malted barley from a single distillery. A blended Scotch is a blend of a single malt and grain alcohol or grain whiskies. Some of the most well-known Scotches are blended Scotches. Some names that you'll probably heard: Johnny Walker, Chivas Regal, Dewar's or Dewar's.
Dewar's.
It looks like Dewar's to me. Famous Grouse, Pinch, Cutty Sark, J&B, and Old Parr, to name a few. Pretty much, if it was in your dad's liquor cabinet, it was probably a blended Scotch, or at least that was the case in my dad's liquor collection. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with blended Scotches, and I'm not trying to berate anyone for liking them. I enjoy many of them, and I have bottles of Johnny Walker Black Label, Chivas Regal, Dewar's, and Famous Grouse that I always keep in stock. They're relatively inexpensive, they taste good, and I even know some people that prefer the taste of a blended Scotch. What I'm trying to do is just to make you an informed consumer and point out to you what you're actually getting. The reason that blended Scotches are usually affordable is because it's only 15 to 40% Scotch. So you can go to a store and buy something that only has 15% Scotch, and legally they can call it a blended Scotch, while 85% of it is a grain alcohol. For me, honestly, that doesn't seem right. Glenfiddich 12 is not a blended Scotch. It's a single malt, so it's not diluted with grain alcohol, although they will add water to bring the proof down to what is advertised on the bottle. In order for a Scotch to be called a Scotch, it has to follow some rules. It has to be made in Scotland from only cereal, water, and yeast. It must be aged for a minimum of 3 years in oak casks. It must be bottled at a minimum strength of 40 ABV or 80 proof. It must be distilled below 94.8 ABV so that it retains the flavor and aroma derived from its raw materials, and no flavoring or sweetening is permitted. And the rule seems simple, but keep in mind this is just for a Scotch, not a blended Scotch. Pretty much anything goes when it comes to a blended Scotch. There are no limits to how many different Scotches can be used. There is no fixed percentage of how much Scotch to grain alcohol can be used. The only rules are that if there is an age statement, it must refer to the youngest whiskey in the blend. So if you blend a 50-year whiskey with an 8-year whiskey, the age statement must be 8 years, not 50. But honestly, if you're only drinking 15% Scotch, does it really matter how old it is?
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, you're drinking 85% grain alcohol.
Yeah.
Also, the Scotch it does contain must be aged at least 3 years. And again, does it really matter? I say no, but...
Your palate also says no.
Yes. But we don't have to worry about that here because we are dealing with a single malt Scotch. So the only thing it's diluted with is water to bring down the proof to 80 proof. Glenfiddich describes the tasting notes as sweet, fruity notes with butterscotch, cream, malt, and subtle oak flavors. I don't know if you remember what notes you got from it when you tasted it.
I don't remember feeling like it was creamy, but I definitely got the oaky flavor. It was sweet as well. But yeah, I can't say I would call it creamy.
I think we have similar palates. It's probably why we get along so well. I definitely get the fruity and the subtle oak flavors. And I do actually get a little bit of smokiness from it, even though it's not a peated scotch. Peated scotches are usually the ones that taste smoky because of the way that the malt is treated. Glenfiddich is aged in bourbon and sherry casks. So I think that the smokiness comes from the bourbon casks. Scotch doesn't have the same strict guidelines that bourbon has when it comes to their barrels, where they can only be used once. So a lot of times Scotch distilleries will age their Scotch in used bourbon barrels because they're still perfectly good after that one barrel. What they'll do is barrel their Scotch at 127 proof to pull any flavors from the barrels the bourbon did not, since bourbon is barreled at 125 proof. And as we mentioned before, alcohol is a solvent. What we actually like is the taste of the wood. So to get that taste of wood from a used barrel, it has to be barreled at a higher proof than what was in there before. And as a result of the higher proof, there tends to be more tannins in the Scotch, which is why you'll find Scotch to be drier than bourbon. So now that we got the nerdy sciencey stuff out of the way, Glenfiddich was started by William Grant and his 7 sons and 2 daughters in the summer of 1886.
Wow, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, I think that's something common that we find in most of these whiskey distillers, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
There's a lot of kids and the wives didn't give head, apparently.
Yeah. Exactly.
What is remarkable about them, though, is that they actually built the distillery by hand, and it took them over a year to build.
Wow.
William named the distillery Glenfiddich after the Gaelic word for Valley of the Deer. And that's why there's a picture of a deer on the bottle and the packaging. Glenfiddich is still family owned and operated and has miraculously not been acquired by an alcohol conglomerate or a private equity firm.
Wow.
Building a distillery was a 20-year-long dream by William Grant, and with the help of his family, that dream became a reality. And the first drops of spirit started trickling out of his copper stills on Christmas Day, 1887.
What a gift.
Yep. And now that has become a gift that he gives us, or that his family gives us.
Yeah.
Much like the U.S., Scotland also had their moral panic, and prohibition struck them in 1923. William Grant and Sons was one of only 6 distilleries allowed to operate in Scotland during prohibition, while under the leadership of Grant Gordon, William Grant's grandson, priding themselves on only having 3 ingredients, water, yeast, and malted barley, led to their unique 3-sided bottle and packaging in 1961. So if you can tell, it's very triangular.
Ah, now I see. Yeah.
At $55 for a single malt, it's an easy buy recommendation from me. That is pricey, but it's actually very reasonable for a single malt. I know that's more expensive than other scotches you're probably familiar with, but again, this is a single malt, not a blended scotch, so there is no grain alcohol in this to dilute it. If you're new to whiskey and you can't bring yourself to pay that much, I have 2 recommendations for you. The cheapest one is to try it at a bar. Any good bar will have Glenfiddich 12 in stock. This is a classic. A pour will cost you $10 to $12. At least try it if you've never had a single malt before. My second recommendation is to buy a bottle of Monkey Shoulder. It's $34 and is probably the cheapest way for you to try a scotch made from single malt whiskeys. This is a blended single malt, not a blended scotch, so there is no grain alcohol in it to dilute it, and it's made by blending 3 single malts, Belvini, Kininvie, and Glenfiddich. And that's how I was first introduced to single malts, and that's what inspired me to buy a bottle of Glenfiddich, since that is by far the least expensive of the 3 malts that it's made from.
Yeah. Treat yourself.
Exactly. It's also made by William Grant and Sons. And I believe, did you ever try the Monkey Shoulder?
I did. Yeah. That was the first go around. It was good. I liked it.
It is really good. And it's maybe like 75% as flavorful, if not more, of Glenfiddich. It's really close, actually. Now, I do want to give a special shout out to our super friend, Alejandro, who commented on our Mike Madman Markham episode. he said that there was a video game called Quantum Break that was released on April 5th, 2016. He stated that he noticed that there are some similarities between the Mike Markham episode and the video game. And maybe the developers were inspired by the story of Mike, but it was just an observation, and he loves the podcast.
Yay. Thank you so much. That's really interesting. I kind of want to see that game now.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Were you familiar with the game before, Isela?
I have not even heard of it. I'm curious to see if there's something we can find on YouTube after this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not familiar with it either, but I'm anxious to check it out. It does sound super interesting.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up.
Yep, and thank you so much for listening and letting us know about the game, Alejandro.
Yeah. Alejandro. I want to sing that song. I didn't do any singing in this one. Damn it. I'm just kidding.
Would you like to impress us with your beautiful singing voice now?
I have no singing voice. No.
No. Special shout out to our super homies, super friends, Sophia, Natasha, OG Eric, Angie, Eli, Madtown Charity, Katia, Victor, Christine, Josh, and Eric J.
Yay.
If you want to be super cool and help support the show, get the episodes a week early and ad-free, get your name shouted out on the show, and get some stickers from us a few times a year, and help support our whiskey and roadside burger habits, check us out at patreon.com/technicallyaconversation or check the show notes. Best of all, it's only $2 a month, baby. You can't even buy cigarettes or Joe Metheny's mystery meat hamburgers for that much.
Wakala. So nasty.
You know, in all honesty, though, I don't think that I would ever buy a burger from Metheny. He didn't look like he was very hygienic, and I bet he didn't wash his hands before handling the food. I also can't imagine that his food prep station met USDA and food inspection standards.
I'm almost positive. If he's kind of like laughing behind his little hamburger stand, watching you eat it, he's also laughing because he scratched his balls and was like, oh, let me manhandle all your buns now. And I'm talking about, real buns.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't look, he's going to be on the episode art. He doesn't look very hygienic.
No. If that was your uncle, that's the uncle you kind of stay away from most of the time. You're like, oh, he's a little smelly and,
Since Isela said that that's the uncle you'd kind of stay away from, we hope that you enjoyed the show and you join us again next week. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a review, tell a friend, and subscribe wherever fine podcasts are sold. Follow us on the socials at GreetingsTAC. Email us at greetingstac@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 915-317-6669. If you have a story of when you ate human flesh at a roadside hamburger stand to share with us.
I think you should just sound off favorite hamburger as long as it's not In-N-Out. Go. I'm just kidding. No, that's so mean.
In-N-Out is some good shit. I like it better than Whataburger, for sure.
Look, I like their fries better than any other fries, but they have to be animal style.
They do have to be animal style because their fries are trash.
No, I mean, I'm a raccoon, so I guess that makes sense. I'm with this trash diet. And the dark circles. I mean, look at this. I'm very raccoony.
You do not have dark circles. You do have a dark finger, though.
I do. Oh, my God.
I wonder where you put that in. No, I'm just kidding.
Gross. You're so nasty.
Where has your finger been, Isela?
Nasty. Starting all these whack-ass rumors.